Dr. Paul Mason. Alzheimer's disease, also known as dementia, is a metabolic disorder caused mostly by insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance means insulin doesn't work properly. So if there's some parts of your brain that need insulin to take up glucose, then what happens if the insulin's not working properly? It means there's some parts of the brain that aren't able to take up glucose or sugar normally. In that situation, those brain cells are starved. They don't get the energy they need, so they're not going to work properly. That leads to cognitive dysfunction. So how do you deal with that? Well, is there a source of fuel to the brain, what we call a substrate, that doesn't require insulin? It's called a ketone. So if you go on to change your metabolism from burning carbohydrates to burning fat, when you burn fat, you can produce ketones, and these ketones can cross into the brain and provide brain cells. Even if they're insulin resistant, they can provide the brain cells with a source of energy.
Q&A. How to change metabolism from sugar burning to fat burning? Reducing carbohydrates significantly while increasing protein and saturated fats will do it. Links to videos on this topic are in the description below.
We can actually improve cognitive function in an insulin-resistant brain. And remember, type 3 diabetes is dementia.
Q&A. What are the types of diabetes? Type 1. Pancreas secretes little or no insulin. Insulin is required to allow glucose to enter the body's cells. This type usually starts in younger people. Type 2 is the most common type of diabetes, when the body is insulin resistant and can no longer maintain glucose levels in the blood. Type 3, this is a metabolic disease causing Alzheimer's or dementia.
If you're interested, I've actually got a lecture provocatively titled, Are You Smarter Than a Doctor? And I do talk a little bit about some of the stuff on dementia there, and I've got some longer lectures on dementia. But the other thing is that dementia is often caused by bad diet. It is a metabolic disease. The brain is only 2% of the body's weight, but it uses 20% of the body's energy. So what that means is it's incredibly active energetically, metabolically active. So if there was any organ in the body that was going to be susceptible to a metabolic disease, it was going to be the brain. And it is. It absolutely is. And a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to get my ApoE4 checked because I want to see if I'm going to get dementia or not. And it's often stated, a slight exaggeration, that if you have 2 of these ApoE4 genes, one from mum, one from dad, then your chances of developing Alzheimer's disease are increased by about 20 times. Now, it's not quite that high. It's probably actually lower than 10, but it still is a significant increase. So then the question comes on, well, is that truly an increase of that much in everybody, or is it only in those people who have metabolic ill health? And there was this really elegant study where they took a population from Nigeria. They looked at a city in Nigeria, and they looked at an ethnically identical city in Indianapolis in the United States, because these 2 cities were historically connected by the slave trade. So they actually had the same DNA. And this population of ethnic Nigerians actually had the highest carriage rate of ApoE4 in any population in the world. And then they said, well, if it's truly just a genetic thing, then they should be the same level of increased risk of Alzheimer's disease in the Americans and in the Nigerians. Now, I don't need to tell you that the state of metabolic health in America, with the average American, only 12% of Americans not having, at least one problem with one of the symptoms of metabolic syndrome, is atrocious. And that's what this study reflected. The rate of dementia in the American population was 2.5 times greater than the genetically identical Nigerian population. And there's reasons why the ApoE4 genetics is much more susceptible to damage through metabolic health. And I go through that in my lecture. But needless to say, good metabolic health protects against dementia. The brain is incredibly metabolically active. So if you have a metabolic disease, the brain is a sitting duck.
Insulin resistance means your insulin is not working properly. If you have insulin resistance, then some parts of your brain will have trouble taking in glucose for energy. then those parts of the brain are starving and not working. That will lead to cognitive dysfunction. The source of energy for the brain not requiring insulin? Ketones. By changing your metabolism from sugar burning to fat burning, that will produce ketones. These will provide brain cells energy. Q&A. How to change metabolism from sugar burning to fat burning? Reducing carbohydrates significantly while increasing protein and saturated fats will do it. Links to videos on this topic are in the description below. Dr. Mason says, we can improve cognitive function in an insulin-resistant brain. Remember, he says, type 3 diabetes is dementia. Q&A. What are the types of diabetes? Type 1. Pancreas secretes little or no insulin. Insulin is required to allow glucose to enter the body's cells. This type usually starts in younger people. Type 2 is the most common type of diabetes, when the body is insulin resistant and can no longer maintain glucose levels in the blood. Type 3, this is a metabolic disease causing Alzheimer's or dementia. Dr. Mason has other videos on dementia. See the description below this video for the links to these videos. Dementia is often caused by bad diet. It is a metabolic disease. The brain is 2% of our body's weight, but it uses 20% of our energy. The organ most susceptible to metabolic disease, our brain. ApoE4 gene, commonly called the Alzheimer's gene. Dr. Mason says many people believe if you have two of these, one from dad, one from mom, you are very likely to get Alzheimer's. But the question is this statement true for everyone, or only those metabolically unhealthy? In a study of Alzheimer's genetic risk, two identical ethnic populations were studied, one from Nigeria and another from Indianapolis. These populations happen to have the same DNA, and they happen to have the world's highest ApoE4 carry rate. If ApoE4 Alzheimer's risk is genetic, then the study results should show that these two populations have the same Alzheimer's rate. However, America's metabolic health is much worse than in Nigeria. And the results of the study? The rate of dementia, or Alzheimer's, in America in this exact same population was 2.5 times higher than the population in Nigeria. Dr. Mason concludes with, good metabolic health protects against dementia. The brain is incredibly metabolically active. So, if you have a metabolic disease, your brain is a sitting duck.